Jim, good morning.
Hey, Thomas.
You mentioned on the radio just a moment ago that you would match any offer sheet that Elias Pettersson were to sign, and I just want to follow up on that. How important is it from your point of view to avoid that eventuality entirely, perhaps by getting the deal done before the 28th, just in order to protect your cap structure?
I don't comment on contract negotiations. That's our philosophy here. But I would say, we've had some real good talks here lately, and, we'd like to try to get it done sooner rather than later, but I can't say it'll be done by the 28th. We'll continue to, talk to, his representatives, and when we get to a deal, you guys will be the first to hear about it.
And sorry, I missed the format. I'm not sure if I get a follow-up or not, but I'm just going to shoot. What can you tell us and fans about how amateur scouting operations were impacted this season by cancellations, travel restrictions, travel budget issues, and on and on? How closely did you work with Todd on that?
Well, it was a real difficult year for our scouts because of, the leagues, not playing, and then they'd start up and then they get shut down. It was hard to travel across the border, so it was a difficult year to scout that way. Todd and his group did an excellent job. He's got real good communication skills, and they had Zoom calls every couple weeks. They watched a lot of video. Whenever they could get out to games in the areas when the league started up, they got out there and laid eyes on the players. So I think we're as prepared as ever for the draft, and we're expecting to pick some good players in this year's draft.
Sorry, Thomas, we will indeed take follow-ups. We'll go next to Patrick Johnston, Post Media.
Hey, Jim. Just on the radio again, you mentioned how there's a lot of interest in Nate Schmidt. He's a guy that obviously you guys picked up before the season. Whether he's asked for trade or not is sort of irrelevant, I guess, at this point. What's changed in his scenario? Why is he somebody that you're even entertaining a trade for?
Well, it just seems like for whatever reason, there's a lot of interest in him with other teams. So, we're not necessarily, we didn't put his name out there. Teams have, flown to inquire, and for somehow, when you talk to other teams, it gets out to the media. So, we'll continue to listen on Nate like we do all of our players that other teams call on. And if something makes sense, or we think, it's going to make our team better, or, we're going to look to do it. So Nate's not unlike, all of our other players, but it just seems like, for whatever reason, it's got out there more on him than some of the other guys.
We look at Arizona, they've made another deal here where they're not giving up anything and they're just taking on a player with a contract, maybe needs a new start. Is that something you guys have discussed with somebody, say like Louis Eriksson or any other players that perhaps are on contracts that are uncomfortable now?
Yeah, we've talked to teams, about that, and we're going to continue to talk to them, through the day and tomorrow and leading into the draft, and we'll just see where it ends up going.
Okay, we'll take our next question here from Ben Kuzma with Post Media.
Good morning, Jim. A couple from me regarding the draft. My first question is, it's a rarity in any draft to have offensive defensemen because of a supply and demand kind of criteria, and it's just a rarity. I'm just wondering, with available defensemen in the top 10 who fit that bill, how much is that going into your planning and what you're thinking of what you may or may not do tomorrow?
Yeah, our philosophy, Ben, is to draft the best player available when we pick. So, at the 9th pick, there's some defensemen we really like. They may be there at 9. And then there's some forwards we really like too. So, when we pick at the 9th pick, we're going to take the best player we think's available at 9.
You said earlier that at 9 and 41 in the first 2 days of the draft, that you're pretty confident that you're going to get 2 good players, whether they be a center and defenseman, whatever combination. Is that your thinking today as we get into tomorrow?
Yeah, that second round pick, we're kind of, there's a bunch of guys we like, and we're not necessarily looking positionally. We're going to I think there's going to be more forwards available with that second pick probably than defensemen. So if there's one of those guys we like, and we like some defensemen that are going to be available in the second round too. So if one of those players are there, we're going to, I think we're going to, same as in the first round, in the second round, we're going to try to take the player we think is the best available player.
Okay, moving along, we'll take our next question from Rob Williams, Daily Hive. Rob, go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Just wondering if you are interested in re-signing Brandon Sutter.
Yeah, I talked to Brandon a couple days ago, and I talked to Travis Hamanic. We have a lot of moving parts these next few days, but we do have interest in signing both of them. So, we're going to just see what this next couple days looks like as far as what we can do, and we've talked about internally about trying to bring those guys back.
Also wondering what your goal is regarding your blue line heading into free agency. Do you feel the need to kind of change the mix of the types of players that you have on the back end?
Yeah, I think we're going to try to be real active in free agency to kind of add some guys with some size and strength. We've seen in the playoffs the teams that had some bigger guys back there that play a physical brand of hockey. They had success, and so I think that's something in free agency that we're going to be looking at.
We'll go next to Chris Faber, Canucks Army.
Hey, Jim, wanted to ask about Mikey DiPietro. I know that Ian Clark and some of his media availability said that a goal for Mikey should be to make the NHL next year out of camp. Is that something that you think is feasible for him, or because of the lost games last year, do you think he needs some AHL games before he can get into the NHL?
Yeah, well, he didn't play a lot of games last year. So, if he comes into camp and he deserves to or earns a backup job, then he can be our backup goalie. But I think in a perfect world, we'd like to see him, be the goalie in Abbotsford and play, 60 games, 65 games for our group down there next year and get, lots of action. So he's available if we need him at any point during the season.
And with the addition of Jason Dickinson, that brings a nice defensive line now to what looks like to be your third line. If he's centering that, is that kind of a good landing spot for Vasily Podkolzin as he comes in with his strengths in the defensive zone?
I think so. In getting Jason Dickinson, he's a versatile player. Like he can, he's played the wing before. He's played center. He's a real good penalty killer. He brings speed to the team. He's a good leader. Like everybody we've talked to about his leadership skills, they're really high. So we're excited that we were able to acquire him, and he'll be part of our top nine and gives Travis versatility to either play him at the wing or at center.
Next up, we'll go to Ian McIntyre, Sportsnet.
Good morning, Jim. Mentioning the defense and wanting to add perhaps some size and strength. Seattle just drafted a bunch of guys, too many for an NHL lineup. Have you had any follow-up conversations with Ron Francis, and is that a potential area where you could find some help?
Well, Ron, was real busy yesterday, and I think he's assigned Jason Botterill, the assistant GM, to our team. So I did have a conversation with Jason yesterday. We're going to continue to talk to them, and we'll just see where it ends up. But through free agency or trades, we'd like to add to our blue line.
And there's kind of an unprecedented string of pressure points here between expansion, the draft, and free agency. Do you feel like you need to get most of your work done on the roster in these couple of weeks, or do you look at the time frame as being everything up until the start of next season?
I think it's up till the start of next season, Ian. I think this is a busy time here. This last, couple weeks and the next week to 10 days, we're going to be really busy. And, in a lot of years, that's where you can, add players that, are going to be part of your group moving forward and to start the season. So we're looking at a lot of different options, whether it be through trades, through free agency to improve our team. But we want to, add some players and be a competitive team next year.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Farhan Lalji, TSN.
Hi, Jim. You mentioned that you're still in discussions with Brandon Sutter. With Dickinson's arrival, where do you see Sutter fitting in your bottom six?
Well, he's a veteran player. He's a good penalty killer. We'll just have to see. Like he can play center. With Jay Beagle coming back, he can play the wing. We'll see what happens here in trades the next couple of days. But we just think that he's an important guy in the room, and he's a good fit with our group already, and a good leader in our group. So we'll just see where it ends up.
How much interest has there been in your 9th overall pick? Are you taking more calls than you're making on it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest in the 9th pick. So we're listening. If we think something makes sense, and if we can add a player that kind of fits into our age group, we'll take a look at it. But I would say we're getting more calls on that 9th pick than we have in past years when we've had our picks.
Next up, we'll go to Bick Nazar, Sportsnet 650.
Hi, good morning, Jim. Thanks for doing this. When you were on Sportsnet 650 minutes ago, you mentioned you've given teams permission to talk to Jake Virtanen's agent. What is the context in which teams are allowed to speak to his agent? And is that in anticipation of like a buyout or interest in trade?
Yeah, more of interest in trade. They just want to know, where his situation is right now. And so, we've given teams permission to talk to his agent, and they need to feel comfortable with the situation. So I don't know where it's going to end up, but I guess we'll see in the next 2 or 3 days.
Transactionally, is he in any sort of limbo or anything like that, or are you allowed to trade?
No.
Or allowed to buy him out? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, he's not in any sort of limbo.
Okay, we have time for a couple more here. We'll go to Satyar Shah, Sportsnet 650.
Good morning, Jim. Thanks for doing this. As far as you mentioned trades and you mentioned free agency and defenseman and free agency, would you say, based on how this market is kind of built up for forwards, that the best value might be trade to get forwards, whereas free agency, the value might be on defense?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And, even with all the defensemen Seattle took yesterday, I think there's maybe an opportunity, that they're going to be moving some of those guys on. So we'll continue to have conversations with them, and there's some defensemen that are free agents that we really like, but we're going to work the trade market here the next few days and see where that goes too.
And as far as the draft goes, there's a specific question about Brandon Clark, because you look at your blue line, you have Quinn Hughes, you have Tyler Myers, but if you look long term, I see a spot if he's available there at 9. What do you think of him and potential fit if he's the best player at number 9?
Well, he's got a high-end hockey sense, and he's an extremely skilled player with the puck. So we think, he's going to have the ability to grow into a real good NHL player at some point. So, just because we have some other guys doesn't mean that we're not looking at him if he's there at 9.
All right, our last hand raised here this morning is Thomas Drance. Thomas, go ahead.
Jim, early next week, your club will send out qualifying offers. I think the likes of Pettersson and Hughes are obvious. Does your club plan, and have you made a decision on whether or not to qualify some of the depth players that played games for your club last year in Jace Howerlock and Mark Michaelis?
I think, we've talked about it internally. We're going to continue to talk about it. We'll see what this next 2 or 3 days brings us. And then we'll probably make those decisions on Sunday, as the QOs have to be off on Monday.
And a final one back to the draft. Teams seem to be a little bit split in how they assess the 2021 class. Some teams see it as an under-scouted class. Some teams see opportunity. How is this draft class shaping up in your eyes?
I think we look at it as opportunity. I think, there's enough good players that in the first 2 rounds that we think we're going to add 2 more real good players to our group. And then after that, we're going to have to rely on the area guys, that's seen the players play this year. But I think we have a real good scouting group they've worked hard this year, and we're going to know the players. So I expect, that we'll do a good job from the third round on.